Good. Oh, what a great crowd. Oh my gosh, you responded. It's Friday morning. Sometimes I get dead stares when I ask that question in the morning, so it's nice to hear that you're all alive. My name is Lucia Osborne. I'm Program Director with the American Littoral Society, and I'm working with Randy Rothwell and Cheryl Reardon from NANJAC, as well as Julie Schneider from the Center for Watershed Protection. We are all grantees of the William Penn Foundation, and part of our job duties are to help make sure people understand how they can protect their local waterways. So with the new changes to the MS4 permits, we wanted to host this workshop, and we're really grateful to have representatives from the DEP as well as the Watershed Institute to come and help answer your questions about the new permit changes. So goals today are to help make sure everyone is on the same page with the new permit, as well as to find out ways that we can support each other and work together to improve our water bodies. Before we really dig into it, a couple housekeeping things. This workshop is being recorded, so we're not focusing on any of your faces or anything, but please know that there's a camera in the background, so don't do anything too weird. And other than that, just a gentle reminder that most of the people who are here did not write these rules, and it's just our job to help make sure that you understand them. So please keep that in mind as you bring forward any questions or concerns that you have. Quick little visual to show you all, which you probably have a general understanding of already. But these are our watershed basins in Cumberland and Salem County, and then to the left we have our municipal boundaries. And one thing that I just want to point out is the watershed boundaries have little to no regard for municipal boundaries. So even if you have something going on in your town, hello, welcome, that's happening in your town, it might be a result of something that's happening upstream, and something that you're doing in your town can also be affecting the towns downstream. So that's just one thing to think about. The other thing I wanted to show you, because the new MS4 permit talks a lot about TMDLs and stream sheds, and you're going to have to do a little bit more work around them. This is a map. Again, we have our municipalities, and then we have every stream shed in this area that has an established TMDL, which pretty much covers the entire area. And also, once again, little to no regard for municipal boundaries. So that's just one thing I want you all to keep in mind as we learn and talk and ask questions to our presenters today. So one final thing we'll do before we really dig in. Has everyone used a Mentimeter poll before? Some have, some haven't. Okay. So what we have here is something called a Mentimeter, and it's an opportunity for you to use your phone to either go to menti.com and type in that code, or just use the QR code, and you can answer the question, what do you see as the biggest challenge in meeting the new MS4 permit requirements? So I'll give everyone a couple time. I want to kick it over to Hannah Majiri with the DEP. She is the MS4 case manager for Cumberland County. I'm going to give this to you, and do you flip somewhere? Yeah, I guess you can flip it to your. I was very awkward with that. Perfect.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. How's everyone doing? Good. All right, so while this is getting set up, all right, good morning. My name's Hannah Majiri. I'm a trainee in the Bureau of NJPD's Stormwater Permitting and Water Quality Management. I'm also the case manager for Camden, Cumberland, and Warren County. So for all you Cumberland people out there, it's nice to see you in person. I hope to get to talk to some of you guys after this is over. You can switch it. Thank you. So this is just a quick agenda of what we're going to be talking about today. I understand there are a good amount of former Tier Bs here, so I did want to touch briefly on the tier reassignment. We're going to go through the stormwater program coordinator responsibilities. We'll talk about the permit conditions, the grant that's available to you guys, and then we'll have a Q&A session. Okay, so in a nutshell, the EPA, we are required, all states are required, to periodically reevaluate our MS4 program. Now, New Jersey has not done this since 2004, aka the very beginning of our program. So because of this, and because of the fact that water bodies throughout the state are becoming increasingly more impaired, we were instructed by the EPA to do a reevaluation. And what we found is all towns, Tier A and Tier B included, had waters within or bordering their town that had a water quality impairment or a TMDL. Thank you. This is just a map showing what we found. As you can see, there's a lot of colors on this map. The blue represents areas of only impairments. Yellow is areas of only TMDLs, and green, which makes up the majority of the map, is TMDLs and impairments. So as you can see, at least one portion of every town has some type of TMDL or impairment. Thank you. So now that we're all tier A's, let's jump into the SPC responsibilities. The SPC, they are the primary point of contact for everything stormwater related. It's ensuring that your town is in compliance with the permit first and foremost. It's ensuring that the SP3, or the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, is completed and submitted to us and used during training and all that fun stuff that we'll talk about a little bit later. It's ensuring that everything that needs to be submitted to us and to the county planning board is submitted. Ensuring that things that need to be posted on your dedicated stormwater webpage is posted. Any public notice and outreach is done. People training, who needs to be trained and what do they need to be trained on. The annual report, and of course record keeping. Okay, so let's get into the permit conditions. We're gonna start things off slow since, like I said, there are plenty of former Bs here. I'm gonna ease into it, talking about things that you should have already been doing, things that you may be familiar with already. There's gonna be some enhancements sprinkled in, but the majority you should already kind of have an understanding of. Thank you. Okay, so public involvement and participation, including public notice. So to comply with state and local public notice requirements, you just need to let your community know when major MS4 actions are happening, such as ordinance adoptions or amendments, or the MSW MP readoption or any amendments, just to let your community know what's happening. This can be done through newspapers, emails, website posts, whatever works best for you, as long as the message is getting across. Thank you. Local public education and outreach, this is also something you should be familiar with. The SPC needs to ensure that their town is earning at least 12 points a year and choosing from 3 of the 5 categories that we have listed. The only caveat is that at least one activity must educate businesses and the public on the hazards of illicit connections and improper disposal of waste. It's important to write these down in your annual report so we know what you did for your community to educate them. Thank you. Construction site stormwater runoff. This hasn't changed at all. If you're starting construction, any construction activities that disturb more than an acre, or you're part of a common plan of development that will disturb more than an acre, then you need to obtain a 5G3 permit or an individual industrial permit. Excuse me. Okay, post-construction stormwater management in new development and redevelopment. So this is one of those conditions where there is an enhancement sprinkled in there, so I'll call that out. But for starters, you should already know how your town defines major development and whether or not it is the same or more stringent than the stormwater management rules. Also, it's important to remember that the engineers who approve and the engineers who review the projects are different from each other. They can be from the same firm if that's something that you outsource, but they have to be 2 different people. Also, the reviewer must ensure that these projects are designed in accordance with 7:8 and the BMP manual. Now, something that is new for former Tier Bs is that now your review engineer needs to attend the department's stormwater management design review course, aka SWMDR. That needs to be done every 5 years to stay certified. Now, we do have a list on our website that has the names of people who are already certified. So if you have somebody in mind, you can always check that list, see if they're certified. If they're not, then they just need to attend the next up and coming training. And the SPC will get an email when that is happening. You can change it. All right, continuing on with post-construction. Oopsies, excuse me. Okay, your MSW MP, or your Municipal Stormwater Management Plan, That needs to be re-examined every 10 years and resubmitted to your county planning board for approval. Even if you make no changes to it, it still needs to be resubmitted, and then once it's approved, it needs to be sent to us. This is important because essentially your MSWMP is your town strategy to reduce soil erosion or any flooding during post-construction, so that's why it's important to re-examine it. Your SCO is similar. It needs to be submitted to the county planning board for approval, and then it needs to be submitted to us. Recently, back in mid-July, the department did send out 2 new model SEOs that you could adopt because the rules did change recently. One was a simple version that simply just cites to the rules. We also sent a longer version, which is the full text. Now, if you haven't already adopted a model SEO, we would recommend adopting the simpler version because, you know, say years down the line, the rules change again, your SEO will still be correct. You won't need to re-adopt it. If you adopted the longer full text version, you'll have to go through the process of re-adopting it. And your mitigation plan. So this is optional. If your town wants the ability to grant a variance for stormwater management measures, there needs to be a written mitigation plan. Again, same process. It needs to be sent to the county planning board, and it needs to be sent to us. If you are granted a variance, then your mitigation plan needs to be included in your MSWMP and your SCO. Okay, storm drain inlets. We're just talking about the labeling and the structure here. So essentially all your storm drain inlets need to be labeled. Just something that says, hey, don't dump anything down here, this drains to waterways. There's a couple ways you can do this. So if you can see the bottom right photo, there's a permanent word casting on there. That's perfectly fine. If you don't have that, that doesn't mean you need to go out and get that done. You can apply something like a little button, like the top right photo, or even you can get a stencil and some spray paint and paint a message, but with that, just make sure that those are being upkept and legible so you can see what it says. Also, all storm drain inlets do need to be retrofitted by the end of this permit cycle, which will be December 31st, 2027. That doesn't mean you need to replace all of your storm drain inlets. For example, like the top right photo, you can see that's kind of an older design of an inlet, but they put on that curb opening plate right there, and that's perfectly acceptable. That will bring an old design into compliance. However, if you are adding a brand new storm drain inlet, 2 things need to be true. The first is that it needs to follow the NJDOT's design for bicycle safety, so that would be something like the bottom right photo. Also, any new storm drain inlet needs to have a catch basin underneath, directly underneath, or down the pipe somewhere, or any other BMP that will collect solids or floatables if anything does make its way down the storm drain. Okay, thank you. Okay, storm drain inlets and catch basins. Now we're talking about the inspection, cleaning, and maintenance. So we require that all storm drain inlets be inspected every year. And the reason we ask that all of them are inspected is because the inspection is relatively simple. It could look something like your DPW guy driving down the road, looking out the window and noticing if there's any trash or debris or leaves clogging the storm drain grate. In your SP3, you're going to have to define what warrants cleaning and maintenance for this, and describe what your cleaning and maintenance looks like. It could be something like a quick shovel job or a sweep job, anything like that. Now, catch basins are required, only 20% of your total is required to be inspected every year. That's because there's a little bit more involved with it. This would look like coming out of the truck, maybe getting like a flashlight or something, looking down in it, seeing if there's any trash debris clogging up the catch basin. Again, you're going to have to define what warrants cleaning and maintenance and describe what that will look like in your SP3. Okay, MS4 conveyance, inspection, and cleaning. So this is anything that will convey stormwater, such as your ditches or pipes or anything like that. The change to this is that we're now requiring that you define your program for inspections, cleaning, maintenance, similar to the inlets and catch basins. It's kind of more concrete now, I guess you could say. But it's the same deal as the inlets and catch basins, essentially. Okay, outfall inspections. So, similar to the catch basins, only 20% needs to be inspected every year on rotation. This is because, again, there's a little more to it than just looking at it. However, any new or newly identified outfalls do need to be inspected within 30 days. Now, the department does offer an outfall inspection form that you can use to help guide you through the inspection, but essentially you're looking for the structural integrity of the outfall, you're looking for any instances of stream scouring or illicit discharges. Other stormwater infrastructure inspections. So if you have other infrastructure in your town that hasn't been already called out, it's getting called out right here. This is our catch-all requirement. Anything like stormwater management basins or MTDs or whatever you may have in your town. The program should define what warrants cleaning and maintenance. We require that you follow approved maintenance plans already for whatever stormwater infrastructure you're looking at. If there's not already approved plans, we direct you to our BMP manual for guidance. If for some reason you don't find anything there either, then you do need to inspect whatever stormwater infrastructure you're looking at least 4 times a year and after any 1-inch rainfall.
Is that only municipally owned structures, or is that structures that reside on private property?
I believe it's just municipally owned.
So
You might have to jump in, but I believe, you're talking for this last slide, right?
We have a string of basins that run down the road.
Are you talking about for this, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So we have a string of basins that run down the road and ultimately tie into that basin for water quality. You know that it's on private property. Is the municipality or the county responsible to inspect that basin?
So I'm just trying, I don't know that all of this is relevant, but so your basins on the road are municipally owned catch basins that just convey, but then you're using a privately owned
Yes.
infiltration basin?
There are many roads that do tie into a privately owned.
Okay.
You know, we're not responsible to
Okay.
technically maintain it, but are we now required to inspect that?
You are, so the permit has always, but the Tier A permit and the Tier B, I think always required that you have a way of ensuring that the private owners are maintaining their stormwater infrastructure properly. So you, and every town, I shouldn't say every town, but many towns across the state have come up with different ways. Some towns charge a fee and have a form that has to be filled out, to the other extreme of where towns just rely on the private owners to maintain them, you know, on a,
Well, switching over to Tier A, enforcement takes the position if we discharge into any structure, it becomes our responsibility.
all right, well, I don't think that sounds
That's-
quite right.
But that's
So-
what I'm dealing with at the county level. That's why
Okay.
I want to make sure, because the municipalities in Salem County come to the county and ask us for guidance on this. So I just want to be sure that we're providing appropriate guidance to the municipals, whether or not, if there are structures on the roadway that tie into off-site facilities, are we still responsible to continue our inspection beyond the roadway?
You are just obligated to make sure that those private owners are maintaining properly according to if there was a maintenance plan developed as part of a major development, or we have guidance like Hannah just mentioned in the BMP manual. I think there's also a few other guidance documents on the website, on the stormwater management website, that give you know, a rough idea of general conservative approach. There's also an alternative that if it's post-construction, either the maintenance plan is gone, it's outdated, there was never one in the first place, you can develop a maintenance plan after the fact using our guidance and experience in the field. You know, if we say, like Hannah said, our general guidance says to inspect it 4 times per year after every 1-inch rainstorm, your experience, this basin whatever the infrastructure is doesn't really, need to be cleaned or inspected. You've documented this, you've looked at it, maybe once a year, maybe once every 2 years, whatever. I think you can use that data that you've collected over the years to inform an after the fact maintenance plan that's developed. And then, use our guidance as a starting point. On the other hand, it might need to be cleaned, and it's, if it's in an area of the town where there's a lot of litter and clogging and whatever, it might need to be cleaned 12 times a year. So, but I'm really interested. I'd like to hear more about that after the fact, because I don't know. I think our general assumption was that the county, or I guess the county and state roads had their own infrastructure. I don't know that we'd ever heard that there was any private infrastructure. So, and I'd like to find out who it is from enforcement, because I think there might be some misunderstanding. So,
Okay,
sorry.
thank you. Okay, so Nancy just kind of stole my slide. Now we're talking about private stormwater facilities. So although these are privately owned, the SBC still needs to ensure that they're being cleaned and maintained and inspected as they should be. Like she said, there are a couple ways you can go about it. You can have an agreement with the private owner and say, hey, here's a form, make sure you fill this out so we know that you're inspecting and cleaning and maintaining this. Or the town, or not the town, the private owner can pay a fee to the town, and the town can come out and do the inspection, the cleaning, and the maintenance for them. So it really depends on what works best for you guys and what kind of agreement you come up with. So thanks, Nancy, for the help. It's okay. Additional and optional measures. So additional measures are the things that the department would add into the permit. It would be considered most likely a minor modification to the permit. You would get a notification, of course, if this happens. From my understanding, it doesn't happen often, but you never know, so keep your eyes open. And optional measures are things that the town can add to their own MS4 program, something that we don't necessarily require. It could be something like a special ordinance or a different permit requirement that touches on issues that are unique to your own town. So feel free to do that. I mean, it is encouraged, why not? And then lastly, we have record keeping. This is something that's always had to be done. We ask you to keep all records of your MS4 permit, anything related to your MS4 program, handy, at least for the permit cycle, so at least for 5 years, because if the EPA or the DEP comes out for an audit or a site inspection, we will ask you for these records to ensure that you're complying with the permit. If you don't have the records, we have no way of knowing what you're actually doing. It has to be made available to the department upon request. I could email you and say, hey, can you send me XYZ? And we would expect you to have those handy. But that concludes everything that was already included in both the Tier A and the Tier B permits. I'm going to hand it off to Sherry Preissig, who's going to talk about all of the new requirements for the former Tier Bs. Thank you so much for your attention, and I hope to talk to some of you guys after this is done. Thank you. Thanks for letting me use your table.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. Hey everybody, can you hear me okay through here? First time I wear pants with no pockets, and I need a pocket here. Does anyone have questions about what Hannah just presented before we go on? Okay. All right, well, like she said, I'm going to start talking about all the things that if you are, raise your hand if you're a former Tier B town and this is all your first couple months of being a Tier A. All right, it's so nice to meet some of you, and I've heard some of your names, Barbara. I know some of you from past little exercises, so it's cool to actually see your faces. So what I'm going to do is explain what you need to know as a new Tier A person. Tom, hi. We talked on the phone a few times. And And if you're a Tier A that maybe is a little behind on things, I'll help get you up to speed. So please interrupt me along the way. I'm not super formal the way I like to present, so just holler if you need something. So first thing we're going to talk about is your stormwater pollution prevention plan. If you're a former Tier B, you might not have one of these yet. You might be kind of working on it. If you're a long-time Tier A permittee, you might have one from 2005 and it needs to be updated. So I'm going to explain all the things you need to do with your stormwater pollution prevention plan. SP3, SPPP, whatever you want to call it. So if you don't have one, or if the one you have is like fossilized, you need to create a new one. So when I say create one, you don't have to write one from scratch, but it's going to be, I'll talk about the template in a minute. It's going to basically describe in words your entire operation and maintenance plan for your stormwater program. It will touch on each permit condition and kind of illustrate how your town is meeting the permit conditions. We do have a template that you can use. It'll make like a fill-in-the-blank style form, and your SP3 is going to be about, I'm going to say, 25, 30 pages, maybe less. Depends on how much you include, how much detail you include. We have a template on our MS4 website. So if you don't have one and you've never had one, don't worry. Just go onto our website. We have two different versions that are fillable. One's a Word document, which you can just use it that way. One's a PDF document with like a fillable PDF. It'll prompt you to, it'll be like, please describe your street sweeping program. I'm going to use that one because everyone loves talking about street sweeping. And you're going to need to put every little detail in there, like the following streets need to be swept once a year. You're going to list out your streets that only have storm drain inlets that, well, we'll get into the which ones you sweep, but it's going to be that sort of detail. These streets get swept 3 times a year. These streets get swept just once a year. Anything that's a municipal road, that's the level of detail that you need in your stormwater pollution prevention plan. So for every permit condition, there are going to be those types of questions in your stormwater pollution prevention plan, basically saying, what do you do, how exactly do you do it, and then you're going to keep the records to back it up. So, like I said, the department has a model. You don't have to use our model. You can write one yourself if you have a format that you prefer. That's okay, as long as it has everything in there and it hits on all the details. It should be like a how-to manual, you should be able to hand it to somebody. I'm retiring. You're now the stormwater pollution or stormwater program coordinator, and you're handing your SPC title over to somebody else. They should be like, oh, okay, I know what we need to do. That's what it's supposed to be. So not every one is going to match exactly. Okay, so let's talk about the municipal stormwater webpage. This is something that the Tier Bs did not have to have. Some of you had some of your stormwater materials on your websites anyway. If you're a longtime Tier A permittee, you've always had to have your stormwater, bless you, materials on your website, but not necessarily in one place. The thing that's different now for everybody is it's got to be, we have a little template for a one-stop shopping, like a web page with all these things on here. So like I say, most of you should have a stormwater pollution prevention plan already, or that's where it's going to go, onto this dedicated web page. Your municipal stormwater management plan should be on there. Your stormwater control ordinance should be on there. And if you haven't renewed it yet, don't not put it up there. Just put your latest version of whatever you have up there. All of your community-wide ordinances, and we'll talk about these in a minute. Everyone should have, well, Tier A should have a MS4 outfall map. And yes, ma'am.
Will the PowerPoint be shared?
Yes, I think so. We can do that. It's fine with me.
As long as you're okay with it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, why not? Absolutely. So if you don't have an outfall map and you're an old Tier A, well, you should have had one, but so you should put that up there. Everyone within the next couple of years should have a stormwater infrastructure map. That's going to go up there. It's not due yet, so you can't put it up yet. So once it, I think December 2026, or is it January 2026?
2026.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't have the right off the top of my head.
2026.
January 2026, okay. That's going to go up there. Your watershed improvement plan, Nancy's going to talk about this later. There's 3 phases to it. At each phase, whenever you get something to put up, you put it on there. So it's going to just build over time. So anyway, we have an HTML template. It's supposedly easy to use. I don't do this kind of stuff. It sounds terrible to me, but if you have a website administrator who knows how to do that stuff, we have a template they can use, and we also have people in-house who can sort of step them through it if they need any kind of help. It's not as hard as it sounds just to create a web page. So, okay, we can move on to ordinances, and I'm gonna have to check my notes so I make sure I hit them all. All right, some of these you probably already have, even if you had no stormwater permit at all. Pet waste, you don't want people just like letting their pets go to the bathroom everywhere. But the purpose for us is to make sure that that kind of waste doesn't get into the stormwater and into the water bodies in your town. Same thing for wildlife feeding. If you attract geese with, people feed them bread. I'm a Doctor Who fan, and I was watching an episode of Good Omens, David Tennant. And he says the best thing to feed ducks is frozen peas. That's not good for here either. Anyway, you shouldn't feed them anything. So you don't want anybody feeding ducks or anything, because when they congregate, they're making a mess, and it's going to eventually wash into the stormwater. These are your ways to approach people who are doing something wrong. And if you didn't have these ordinances, they'd be like, why? I'm still going to do it. You can't make me. You can't make me stop. Litter control, you can adopt your own, or you can just enforce the state litter statute. That's up to you. If you don't enforce the state litter statute, then please adopt something on your own that's a litter control related. Next one is improper disposal of waste. This one's kind of intended to keep people from doing things like dumping paint or grease or something intentionally down the storm drain. And again, people might say, well, you never said I didn't have to. Yeah, we did. We have an ordinance for that. So that's what the purpose is. Next one is yard waste. There's 2 different avenues to go here. If you're and even if you don't do pickup, like I live in Springfield Township in Burlington County, we don't do pickup of anything. Like it's just, they pick up the trash, which is great. But don't worry, there's something for everybody. If you like to do yard waste like leaves and grass, you want to pick it up in a container like a bucket or a bag or something like that, you would adopt a containerized yard waste ordinance. So that's for just grass and leaves. If you're the type of town who has pickup service but it's loose, you just want a big pile out there at the side of the road, you would adopt a loose yard waste ordinance. We have the 2 different ones posted on our website for you to choose from. You could even adopt both if you do both things. If it's loose yard waste, the ordinance explains stuff like don't put it out any sooner than 7 days prior to pickup. Don't put it too close to the storm drain inlet. It's got to be 10 feet at least away from the storm drain inlet, because the wind and the rain will blow it right down there. If you don't do any of that, you still want to adopt a loose yard waste ordinance, because this is for people who hire private companies to come pick their stuff up, and they might leave it. It's usually out in a pile. You don't want anybody to be doing that. You don't want anybody to be putting it out for weeks and weeks ahead of time and really close to the storm drain inlet. So please, if you don't do any pickup service at all, please adopt the loose yard waste ordinance. It also is helpful because it can get, it is also aimed at people who like to cut their grass and then blow all their grass into the street and then right down the storm drain so it looks clean. We have a loose yard waste ordinance. It tells you can't do that. So that's something to just keep in mind. All right, private storm drain inlet retrofitting. This one is just to ensure that any new storm drains are installed on private property follow the design that Hannah was talking about, the DOT bike safety design, and with the small openings to keep the solids and floatables out. That's for private properties. Next one is illicit connections, and this is, for example, hooking like your sanitary wastewater pipe from a home or a business straight into the MS4. This says that's not okay. You can't do that. That's an illicit connection. We have 2 new ones. The privately owned salt storage ordinance. This one is new to everybody. This is something that we just did in this latest permit iteration. This means that anybody who has a salt pile out in their yard, maybe it's like a small business and they keep salt on hand for ice and snow in the winter, they can't leave it there all year long. If they do store it for temporarily, it needs to be covered neatly and tarped with weights on it so it's not just washing down. I went to a site visit one time up in, it was in Linden, and we were looking at a different place, and I turned around and I saw this trail of white behind me, and it was coming from we weren't even looking at that property, it was coming from a business. They had a salt pile, and it was August, so why was it still there in August? I don't know. And it was just like this big wide swath. It looked like almost like paint. It was salt washing straight into this storm drain inlet in the middle of their parking lot. It was kind of on a slope, and I'm like, that's been happening for many months at least. So that's what this one's about. We don't want salt piles just to be like open or poorly covered and getting into the stormwater. There's one more, the tree removal ordinance, and this one is still in the draft phase. It's almost there. There's some more discussion internally for us to go before this one's final. And basically it's intended to make sure that trees are removed only when necessary and replaced in a responsible manner. Any questions on these so far? All right, I'm going to keep going. I should mention, we are going to, once that tree ordinance is final, we will put together one ordinance package. So you don't have to adopt all these individual ordinances, especially if you're a new Tier A, this might be helpful. We're going to put all of them together in an ordinance package, so you have one ordinance and you pass it, you public notice it, everybody talks about it, you sign it, and it's just one that covers everything. You can do that if you're an original Tier A too, so that's coming as soon as that tree gets done. All right, let's talk about street sweeping. There's a change here for the original Tier A's, and this is brand new for the new Tier A's. Municipal roads, that's all we're talking about, just municipal roads. The county and the state are going to do their own roads, so just think about your municipal roads. Some of them may get swept 3 times a year, some of them may get swept just once a year, some of them are not required to be swept at all, and I'm going to have a picture in the next slide to explain, but essentially 3 times a year. Any roads that, or segments of roads that have storm drain inlets that drain to surface water. Okay, those get swept 3 times a year. So again, I'll show you a picture in a minute. I'm sorry, yes?
The phrase storm drain inlets that drain to surface water, does that mean that the inlet directly discharges into surface water? Like I have a lot of them where the water would end up getting to surface water after going down like a raceway or something. Like through a farmer's field. I don't quite understand that term.
I think that's considered direct. Yeah. If
it discharges directly.
Your vehicles, with anything with an outside storage area, any place where things are exposed to stormwater outside and could potentially wash into the MS4, that's what we're talking about. So if it's a municipal shop of some kind, that's what we mean. So we're talking about both of these places when I talk about the next couple conditions. And these are going to be things that the former Tier Bs never had to be concerned with. I don't even know if all of you have a maintenance shop. My town does not. We hire the guys down the street. My neighbors do it, but so it's going to apply to them. So even if you're a small town, I'm from a small town, I get it. And we're very, very rural. So, but you've got some place in your municipality where these activities are happening. So what we're saying in the permit, and this is not new for most of the previous Tier A permittees, but it's just a good refresher, I suppose. Every month you want to do site inspections and document that you had someone look around at everything that's outside exposed to stormwater, and you're going to just say, yes, everything was fine, and if there's something that needs to be tweaked, you need to clean something up or protect something better, you mark it on your inspection. Every site needs to have an inventory list of the materials and equipment that's outside where it can be exposed to stormwater. If it's inside, we don't care. Keep it inside. Things that are outside need to have labels that are legible, clean, easy to see. Spill kits, if you have like a trash can full of kitty litter, that kind of thing, sawdust, make sure you have spill kits near any liquid transfer like fueling or anything like brine, I suppose, and make sure those spill kits are protected from getting wet. I mean, that would be pretty bad if your kitty litter got full of water. And whenever you're finished, this also seems like common sense, but just in case, you can't just leave it there. Like if there's an oil spill, you throw some sawdust on it, you have to go back and clean it up. You know, that's important. That's the whole idea. Otherwise, now you have two things that are out there making a mess. So make sure it gets cleaned up and put away where it's supposed to. If you have bulk liquids, we are talking about brine, oil tanks, something like that, have a secondary containment around it. So if when you're filling up or emptying or whatever, if any leaks out, it spills out during operations, it's kind of contained. That's what we mean by the secondary containment. Okay. So when you're doing fueling or other kinds of bulk liquid transfers, just make sure you have drip pans, block your storm drains, post whatever signs, and replace, like just to explain what you need to do there, replace any broken equipment. And like I said, you probably already do this. If you have a yard, this is just make sure you're doing it. Make sure everything is in place. Those secondary containment areas that I talked about, if you have let's just say a used oil tank, people drop off their oil and it's protected by a thing. If it's getting full, you had a storm and you want to empty it, if it's all slimy and disgusting, don't just let it out. You have to take it, like shop vac it or whatever, to get it out of there and dispose of it properly. If you have something in there that's clear, that you can't tell if it's been contaminated, you need to treat it as if it is contaminated. But if you have, let's just say oil again, and it's rained, that secondary containment area is full of clean looking water, there's some leaves in there, you can unhook the valve and let it run out. We're just saying make sure you have a program in place so everybody who works there knows when it's safe to let that water out of the secondary containment. Vehicle maintenance, when you're working on any kind of equipment, vehicles, make sure that it's either indoors or if it's outside, do all the things you can to keep it from rain or snow or whatever from getting into the dirty parts of the equipment and washing into the storm drain. Again, use drip pans and block your inlets. And if you need to keep it out for a while, use a tent over top. That's what most people do anyway. And then wash wastewater containment. So this is a little, do you have any underground wash? Okay. If you do, it's becoming less and less, but if you do, the underground containment needs to be checked for leaks every 3 years. I have to read my notes for this because it's kind of, I don't have this happen a lot. You're inspecting any of the visible portions before you use it every time. You want to empty it out if it gets anywhere near 95% full, just so you make sure you're not overflowing, and then it has to be inspected annually by a New Jersey licensed engineer. Okay. This is for storage of salt and other granular de-icing materials. If it's in a permanent structure like a big salt dome, you're going to store it in a way to minimize exposure to snow and rain. So some of them have doors, some of them don't. If you don't have a door, make sure it's shoved way in there. You might have an alcove to keep it protected. Make sure the materials aren't sticking out and getting rained on all the time. And when you're doing operations, loading and unloading from that salt pile, let's say, just make sure it's not getting tracked. Sweep it up after you're done. As soon as it's feasible. In the middle of a blizzard, you're not going to be, hold on, we got to sweep up. Just do your best to clean up and keep it as clean as possible so the materials that should be inside aren't getting washed away outside. Okay, aggregate materials, wood chips, and finished leaf compost. This stuff, all these materials need to be kept at least 50 feet away from any water bodies or any storm drain inlets or ditches or any kind of conveyance channels. You can use grading, you can use berming, hay bales, sandbags, whatever you got. Just try to keep that stuff contained and protected from washing into the storm drain system or into the stormwater system. Cold patch asphalt, most people put this inside, but if you have to keep it outside, make sure it's covered. really well and on an impervious surface, so it's not going to seep down into the ground. Yeah, most of the places I've seen, they move it inside. They don't even bother keeping it outside because it's expensive too. You don't want it getting washed away. Street sweepings and storm sewer cleanouts, all the crud that you collect, that also needs to be kept. If you're keeping it on site and not taking it directly to whatever, like a landfill or county place, you can keep it up to 6 months as long as it's in like a leak-proof container, some sort of dumpster type thing that's covered or on an impervious surface. So if you typically do your clean out your storm drains or your catch basins and then pile it up at your yard, that's what we're talking about. Make sure it's being kept away from the storm system. Okay, this is the last one on maintenance yards. Construction and demolition waste, wood waste, and yard trimmings. And if you collect a lot of you don't collect these things, so just ignore. But if you do have these things, if you have your residents come and drop off things like this, you want to keep this also 50 feet at least away from water bodies or in your conveyance system. And again, berms, sandbags, hay bales, whatever you can do. If it's sloped, keep it as protected as you can so none of those materials are washing down into your storm system. If you're going to keep it on site for a really long time, you might need to get a solid waste permit. That's just a little note there. Okay, scrap tires, if you're keeping them outside, they need to be some kind of covered, like maybe a dumpster with a cover on top or a tarp. Just keep them covered. Some people are putting them inside. It kind of seems 50-50. If you have any inoperable vehicles, any broken down trucks, like a 50-year-old ambulance out in the back of the yard, make sure it's covered in some way or there's drip pans underneath, and check it every time you do your monthly inspection. Most people don't have these kinds of things, but if you do, just make sure there's nothing getting out of them and leaching into the ground. And then this is an old one. Refuse containers and dumpsters that are on these sites need to be covered. Okay. That's enough of maintenance yards, and I talked before about finished compost. This is something a little different. We have a permit now for if you are doing active composting or wood chipping. If you have a place, one of your sites is where people bring trees and you put them through the grinder and make compost and stuff out of it, you need this kind of permit. It is no longer covered under the stormwater permit. So this is a wood waste recycling and leaf composting permit. Some of you may have, we did a couple outreach sessions a year ago or so about this permit. So is anyone doing any active composting or wood chipping at any of your sites? Okay, if you end up doing that at some point, it's not a stormwater thing, or it's a stormwater thing, but it's not a Tier A municipal thing. It's got its own kind of permit. So I won't get into it, but if there's a link to that permit if you begin to do those sort of things. Okay. Let's talk about training. This is easy stuff. These are the different groups of people that need to be trained and that you're documenting it. If you're the stormwater program coordinator for your municipality, make sure that these 4 groups of people are getting trained. You yourself will need to go to the department's new stormwater program coordinator training. We just kicked it off in August. We're going to have some more sessions next month. We'll be doing it a couple times every year to make sure that everybody who is serving as the #1 go-to person and for all things stormwater in your town, they need to have a consistent understanding of what we mean in the permit. And you'll notice that a lot of these slides are the same because I worked on that and I worked on this. So yeah, it's just making sure that everyone is understanding the permit conditions in the same way. So that's stormwater program coordinator training. We'll be doing it, everyone's got to go through it once every permit cycle. Your municipal employees, anybody who works, DPW staff typically is what I'm talking about. Anyone who's plays a role in executing the permit conditions and making sure that your town is implementing it correctly, they need to get trained, not by us, by you. And I'll talk about each of these in a minute. Hannah mentioned the stormwater management design review course for the people who are reviewing the major development projects for their stormwater management plans. They need to go through a department training that's much more intense than our little stormwater program coordinator training, but it's like a 4-day thing, 4 half-days. And anyone who's serving on a municipal board or governing body who has a say in decisions that happen to your stormwater program, you need to make sure that there's some videos that they need to watch once every term that they're in. So we'll go into each one real quick. There's not a lot to say about it. So each town has a stormwater program coordinator. That person is our contact. So like I do all of Salem County, I also do Burlington and Passaic County. I have one person in every single town who I need to go to say like, oh, here's some new thing happening, make sure you're doing this, or I need you to send me this, whatever. I need a go-to person. So everybody should have a stormwater program coordinator. If you leave, if you retire, if you get fired, someone else has to take your place. We need someone to talk to. So just make sure if you're not already doing it, let us know if that person changes. So that's the person who needs to get trained. We want to make sure that there's at least one person in every town who's really up on things with the stormwater program.
And that's on an annual basis. You said permit. Is the permit annual?
Oh no, it's every 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. So it's not going to be that much. No, it's fine. Are you the stormwater program coordinator? Lucky. All right, so you're off the hook for now. Okay. So we're also recording those sessions. So if you leave and we don't have a training coming up for, I don't know, 5 months or something, we just say, if you'd like, your replacement can watch this little video so they'll get a clue, and all of our slides will be posted so you can like run through them, and if you forget what we meant or forget what we said, you can listen to the recording. Okay. Next up is municipal employees. So this one's big this is another reason why you want to have a stormwater pollution prevention plan, that SP3 document that I talked about. All of your how-tos, your operation manual basically, is going to be, your stormwater manual is your stormwater pollution prevention plan. If you have one of those, everybody needs to get trained on it. You just run through it once a year. Everybody sit down, let's go through page 1, page 2, page 3. Well, the first 5 pages are just like who's on your team. You just get into the meat maybe on page 6 or 7. So everyone needs to know the latest and greatest in your stormwater pollution prevention plan. And then the rest of these topics are really just depend on what is their job. Not everybody needs to get trained on every single thing here. If your clerk is the one doing the education and outreach, he or she does not need to sit through, MS4 mapping. That's not their job. Don't worry about it. Just train the right people on the right topics. That's what this whole thing is. Everyone needs to hear about the stormwater pollution prevention plan. But then it gets, whoever's doing this job, those people just pick, as the stormwater program coordinator, who's doing what in your town, I hope. And then make sure they're properly trained once a year, hit on these topics. Even the contractors, if you hire things out to people, you can't just be like, hope they know what they're doing. Make sure they know what they're doing. So, and you can do it in person, you can do it in the field, you can do it over the computer, whatever you want to do. You can do one-on-one. It doesn't have to be all in one day. But when you train someone, document it, because someday the EPA is going to be like, ding dong, hi, where's your training records? And you're going to say, so please just say, yes, these are the people I trained on this day, and these are the topics. All right, and SWMDR, I'm not going to beat this to death, but anyone who's designing needs to go to the Stormwater Management Design Review course. It's we usually do that twice a year. It's long. It's an engineer thing. This is an engineer thing, and if you're the Stormwater Program Coordinator and you are not an engineer, you're off the hook. You need to make sure your engineer is going to this, and this is another thing, once every 5 years, we do a new training and certify everybody. If there's an amendment to the stormwater management rule, which just happened a few months ago, we did a training to say, oh, here's this one little thing, and it was like, what, 2 hours? Something like that. It's not like a whole 4-day thing again. It's just something changed. You need to know it's kind of important. Can't wait till our next 5 years when we see you again. So the department will notify the stormwater program coordinators and anybody who has attended the previous SWMDR course. They'll say, there's a special thing, we need to have you come attend this, just a short training to make sure you know what the amendment was. Okay. And lastly, if you're on a municipal board and you're a zoning board person and you're voting on the design or a project, we want them to have a clue about stormwater management. So we have these videos. The first one is the longest one. It's about 45 minutes. Yes, it's old. We haven't updated it. It drives me crazy too. So bear with it. It's about 45 minutes. It's called Asking the Right Questions. It just like plants some ideas like, oh, make sure you're not doing this, or make sure to look out for this, that kind of thing. It's just a general sort of thing for stormwater management. That'll give them an introduction. And then let's just say every 2, 3, 4 years, whatever the term is, they need to watch something else, learn a little bit more. And these are so short. These little ones, I think the longest one is 11 minutes. There's one that's 4 minutes. I'm like, wow. So, you know, it's not a big ask, I don't think, to tell them, watch one of these videos and then tell me which one you watched, and just document that. Write down whoever's on your board, if they're making decisions on your stormwater program, make sure they're watching something and that you document it. Okay, and last thing I'm going to talk about is MS4 mapping. So in the past, the original Tier A towns had to map their outfalls. That was it. Now we're asking you to map all of your stormwater infrastructure. If your stormwater is going through anything, whether it's any of these things, an outfall, a groundwater discharge point, any interconnections, a storm drain inlet, we want to see these on the map. All of these little pieces, anything that touches stormwater needs to be mapped. And this is a big thing. So we do have a free mapping tool, and we have help with it, and we have licenses. So if you haven't even started, we have, I think on the next slide, you can go to the next slide. Here's where you start. Have your person who does mapping, a lot of times it's your engineer, click here, check it out. We have help with, it's technical guidance. We have a mapping tool where you can just go out in the field, and if you downloaded it onto a tablet or something, you just drive around, walk out, this is my storm drain, and it'll be like a drop-down thing that tells you, click this, what are the attributes of it, what's the location of it, and it gets saved. We do have people in-house who can also walk through how to use the app on the phone. If you want them to do like a virtual training, we can set something up like that. If you really want them to come out and sit with your staff who's going to be doing the mapping, we will send someone out and do that. We will help. If you're using the mapping tool that we have at DEP, all of the data that you record is being automatically uploaded, so you don't have to like send us your map. If you're doing it on your own, if you're hiring a company to do it and they're not using the DEP tool, that is also fine. It doesn't matter as long as you're getting all the points. Though you will have to, send it in to us through our NJDEP, what is it called? Online, NJDEP online service. Once you have all your mapping done, part of this is to include, remember I talked about that dedicated stormwater webpage, then you'll add the link to that. So anybody in your town can just click on it and see where your stormwater goes. That's part of it too. You're sending it to us and you're posting it on your website. Okay? We're done. Nancy's up, but does anyone have questions on the mapping? That's a big topic, and I'm not the specialist in the mapping, but I know someone who is, and I can, if you want help, I can make sure that you get the right person. His name is Tim Ebersberger, but there's two ladies who are also pretty handy with it. So don't be overwhelmed with a mapping assignment. We have people who will definitely make it a lot easier than you think. Okay.